And there's another reason it's not suitable as intelligence. Because it also is about the global economy overall. And since this occurred, and this specific manner ended up being commenced, specific to what I understand was somebody's specific political strategy, I personally have been involved with efforts to chastise me and my sexuality based upon account schemes and economic schemes that have done things from financing operations connected to El Chapo to laundering money for terrorist attacks in Afghanistan. And at the same time, the actual meaningful relationships I could have with people were intentionally chemically sabotaged for several years while I was labeled to have a disability. Now, it's one thing to say that while I was engaged in these efforts at working on this particular political paradigm, that because I did not identify as a woman of color, there was a specific role that I could have had that could have been more advantageous. But what I did do was provide one, training to staff regarding the difference between a credit union and a bank. That's the only political agency and political leadership I was allowed to assert. And while somebody else made the operational and organizational decisions with my life, I was not supposed to be able to have a sexual relationship because someone wanted me on drugs. Well, my life and life functions connected to me and accounts connected to me, including what I understand, some people understand, was very lucrative while I was actually working with that organization and then shortly thereafter, that ended up being used in schemes associated with bonds for the Houston Medical Complex. I wasn't supposed to be sexually active myself, as if somebody else claimed access to sexuality as either a commodity or maybe even a productive capacity that included some sort of economic productive capacity, and they did not want me to have access to it for myself. And so there's this contrivance that I owe. And my contention is I didn't see anybody produce. That the time when I was there and I was not allowed to have political leadership, I was expected to pay. And I paid. Now, there's not the same kind of records. Nobody wanted to give me receipts. I paid, and somebody liked that kind of payment. And they've been expecting some return on investments they made at that rate and in that manner at that time, and they haven't been getting it. Because in the meantime, I was taken out of contention altogether, while massive, massive crime was allowed to be used in my name with my identity. Now, it's going to be very difficult to make this transition, especially because that same model has been re-engaged. The accusations regarding Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, I believe, are just a smokescreen on one level. That they are actual political operators, but they had authorization. And somebody sat on it long enough and waited long enough to try to flip it as insurance, just like they tried to do with me. And perhaps like they tried to do with the people I used to be affiliated with in some manner, way, shape, or form. But at the end of the day, that cycle is attempting for some sort of recapitulation now. And I'm right here. I'm right here in Texas, which in many ways is ground zero for where it started. 15 years ago, I was deployed to Chicago as part of a drawdown from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Just last year, the former president of the United States was discussing how all of the strategic reserves should be 100% American made. Do you mean made in America? Does that include importing people from other countries? Or taking people that are already here and sanctioning them so that then you can use a classification of it as being about spies or intelligence to put it under the rubric of the Department of State so that people working with the Department of State in the gas and oil sector can claim other people's production as theirs. Then they can ascribe it some sort of lease arrangement that we're supposed to pay rent for our own bodies and productive capacities. And then we're supposed to actually perform in our own abodes during the time frames we're inside, at least. So that then they can record it as us paying royalties they took out on our bodies. And so that's why whatever it was that happened back then was not about intelligence. You can't get away with saying it was about intelligence. There's periodic cycles in my life, and I contend the lives of other people, highly productive. Somebody wanted that quality, but they didn't want to have to acknowledge where it came from. And unfortunately, now we're at a point in time where it has degenerated too much. And we can't afford to sustain the alienation. Alienation has become too expensive. And the monopoly on sexual productivity based upon centralization of options regarding capacity to have meaningful sexual contact with another person, well, the political engineering has outlived its use value, is what I'm contending. You know, it's one of those things where talking about sex and violence is only one side of the coin. There's also sex and intimacy. There's also sex and human quality. There's also sex and family. There's sex and life. And when you think that you're entitled to use sex as part of your political strategy and then visit reprisal on people for not sleeping with who you say they need to sleep with when you say, for the rate you say, you might get to a point where you're trillions of dollars in debt. You have trillions of dollars of obligation you're not going to be able to fulfill. It's not a debt you can default on and swap out, by the way. And I'm very concerned that part of what's going on is people are trying to selectively monopolize capacity for human encounters so that they can actually program sexual experience to only be allowed to be conducted with or among certain people that have already demonstrated that they are loyal to somebody's ultranational claim on their productive capacity. Now, playing games through your little legal system mantras may go so far. You may be able to get away for a certain amount of time playing some role play scenario where she's a traitor and she needs you to get her out of town. And unfortunately, once you cut me out, whoever you put in to replace me did just that. But we have a very significant deficiency because a lot of the underwriting of your luxury came in regards to having a basis based upon national defense. You eliminated that. Your black ops are too expensive. And I'm very sad because in my life, what have I gotten? I was expected to accept the leadership of women of color. I have no women leaders in my life. I was expected to accept the leadership of people of color. I have no people of color in my life. I was expected to cede and submit myself to the leadership of other people. There are no leaders in my life. There are people who have debts they want me to pay. And by and large, they want to be able to do things that used to be illegal while I pay long enough to get the laws changed because we no longer have any leadership available. I'm sorry. We don't have any leaders available. There's no leadership left. We're out of leadership. What else do you want? It's not going to work. I'm hoping, that it's not going to work. Apparently, if you eliminate me, it's a pretty sad day, huh? Wow. Is that what happened? I see. Do you want some numbers?